once again, St. Louis, and welcome to What Retirement Means to You with Jerry Means. He is a financial advisor and the founder of the Means Financial Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Jerry, how you doing this week?
I'm doing fantastic as always, Spike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. I'm very excited about the program that you've put together today. Today we are talking about women in finance, women in retirement. Some of the numbers are alarming, but throughout today's program, you are going to be offering solutions. But let's illuminate first why for our audience. Why is this an important subject for you?
Well, I just think that one of the things that gets overlooked about women is a lot of women miss out on those working years because they're committed to helping the kids out, right? They leave the workforce, go home, they're either taking care of the kids until they're grown, or they're taking time off work to help with the kids' events. They're helping take care of they're more likely to take care of an ailing parent and those sort of things. So when they do that, they get less Social Security credits. A lot of times they miss out on promotions or decline promotions because they don't have the time dedicated to that because they're taking care of the kids. Of course, it's not always the situation, but more times than not, that's what happens. I know in my own personal life, my wife, Angela, she had her own career. We had kids. She took time off of her career. I was the breadwinner, paying into Social Security, building the business. She helped with that part-time. She still helped with the business and helped raise the kids, or did raise the kids. But then once the kids were grown, now she's back in the business helping me work, but she had that gap, right? So she had less time that she was paying in. So part of that deal is that I need to make sure that she's going to be okay if something happens to me, right? Because we've saved our own retirement portfolio and we're managing it and putting our money into the different buckets of retirement. But if something happens to me, I got to make sure that she's okay. And I do that with things like life insurance. Make sure that we do have that emergency plan and that we have that estate plan if something does happen.
And you've shared so much, and if you didn't mind, I was going to share this as well. One of the reasons why it's important to both of us is, we all have a woman in our life. We all have mothers. We all have grandmothers, sisters, daughters, and cousins, and it affects all of us. So planning for women's finance today is important to everyone, so please don't change the channel. We all have somebody out there we care about. For me personally, I've told this to you before on my own, I had two grandmothers who lived into their 90s. I had two grandfathers who passed away earlier. So part of what happened is both of their pensions went away and both of their Social Securities went away. Now, this was over a 20, 30-year period of time, and eventually we had to sell the homes that they had already had paid off to try to pay for long-term care expenses down the road. It's just becoming harder. It used to be that we passed away earlier, but now that we're living longer, and quite frankly, women are living longer, that's just the actuary tables, those are the facts, that they're starting to live with less and less down the road. And I think there are millions of Americans struggling with this. So we want to try to provide income strategies for everyone, both for men and women, but we're finding out that women are living longer with a little bit less further down the road.
Yeah, I think it's an important topic to go over. Because like I said, we help everyone that's approaching retirement, but I can tell you that 1 out of every 4 people that come into my office is a woman that's either widowed, divorced, or single by choice. And they do have those challenges that, aren't always there just for a couple, or that a male may have because, they had, a lot of times they were paid less. We know that the wages weren't always fair, right? So they have less saved for retirement. So I just think it's something that we should focus on, make sure that if they're at home right now and you feel like, hey, I wonder if I've done enough and I'm nervous about talking with someone, you're not alone. Come in, talk to us, we'll sit down, we'll have a cup of coffee, it'll be relaxing. We'll find out what your concerns are and I'll help you address those. And we offer that on our On-Track review.
Right, so we'll talk a little bit right here about your On-Track review. I also want to talk about MUG. And this is part of what we're trying to set up. Again, whether you're male, female, spouse, partner. What exactly is the MUG? How does that help fill up, or how do you help fill up the MUG with your On-Track review?
Yeah, so the MUG is just an acronym that I use. The financial industry loves acronyms, but it stands for mortgage, utilities, and groceries. Those are your essentials. We want to sit down and we want to look at what is your Social Security? What's the best optional way for you to take your Social Security? Your pension, we always talk about if you have a pension, but pensions have many options. You take the lump sum. Do you take the life only? Do you take life with the survivorship? Those are all things that you should be concerned about it, making sure that you're making the right choice, because you only get one swing at it. You know, unless you're Tom Brady, you're only going to retire once, right?
Oh, nice.
So you got to think about that. So those are the kind of things that we help people address. But we want them to feel comfortable. Come in, let's talk about it, and then we'll help you manage your assets to make sure that we fill the income gaps. But that's what we do on our on-track review.
And so the on-track review, it includes investments, taking a look at income strategies. Do you also do things like estate planning, when to take the Social Security, the health care down the road, or are you just in an investment house?
Well, I think a lot of people consider estate planning just for the wealthy. But there's a lot of things that go into estate planning. If a husband takes and he's the breadwinner or has the higher Social Security check, and he takes it early, and he passes away, and that's the check that his wife is going to get, that's estate planning. I mean, estate planning is just what you're going to do or what's going to happen to the people that you leave behind when you're gone. So it's not just for the wealthy. You also have to look at things like durable power of attorney. If a husband or a wife is in the hospital and they're incapacitated and they're the owner of the IRA, right? Because only one person can own an IRA. It can't be a joint account. There's only one owner. It's an individual retirement account. The spouse is a beneficiary. They can only access those funds if their spouse passes away. But if they're incapacitated in the hospital, they can't call up to the IRA company and say, I need to make a distribution because I need to handle some finances. My husband or wife is in the hospital. They're going to say, well, do you have a durable power of attorney for finance? Do you have any type of letter of instruction on file? I mean, that could be part of your estate planning. And we do help people with that. I'm not an attorney, but I work with an attorney. I help them find the right pieces of the puzzle to put in place. But yeah, we help with a written income plan. We look at tax strategies, forward tax strategies, not tax preparation. We want to see what can we do in the future.
All right. When we get back, we're going to continue to talk about how we plan, especially for women's situations in retirement, widowed, divorced, or single going into retirement, why it's so important to have a written plan. And that's something you can do right here. Call the phone number and get your own on-track retirement review. 844-878-1293. More of what retirement means to you with Jerry Means right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Welcome back to What Retirement Means to You with Jerry Means. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. This is an incredibly special program. We're talking about women's issues in retirement. And if we have a woman in our life that we care about, mother, spouse, daughter, this issue is important to everyone. And let's also face it, personal finance, it's more personal than it is about finance. So I've got to ask the question, 1 in 2 marriages in the United States end divorce. Do you have clients who either have gone through divorce and you've got to pick a side, or have you had clients come in who are divorced and had to help them manage the finances?
I've had both of those, Spike. I mean, I've had people come in, obviously, that have been through a divorce or are going through a divorce right now. They called into the show, people just like some of you that are sitting at home right now, and they're not quite sure what to do. And I've had to walk them through the financial part of that process, which also can be a very emotional part of the process. Then I've also had clients that have been with me for a long time, but things happen and they split ways, and then what do you do? It's like having a client split in half, right? So it can be very, very tricky, especially if it's not the best situation. So often I've had to separate the accounts. I've helped walk them through that, and then still be an advisor to both of them, which, it's really not as tricky as it sounds. It's just, them understanding that, listen, I want the best for both of you. I want the best interest for my clients,
Yeah.
we're supposed to, we've always heard that you're not supposed to be emotional about money, but I have a client who's also become a friend of mine, and he said, Jerry, if people don't get emotional about money, I don't know what they get emotional about. He said, you let an account go down by 30-40% and see how emotional people get.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through a divorce, and assets are being split, that can be a very emotional time. But if you have an advisor that's walking you through that and saying, hey, you're going to be okay, and that's what most people want to know, am I going to be okay going through this? I've walked a lot of people through that and said, hey, I have right now, I have Jeff and Diane that they were clients for a long time. For whatever reasons, it didn't work out. They split up. And, I've helped them with, it's called the qualified domestic order, where they're splitting up retirement plans and 401ks. And I've helped walk them through that. And we're done with that now. And actually, they're okay. They're friends again. But I got them through that difficult emotional time. And we try to turn it as positive as we could.
So sometimes it's nice to have a financial referee in between to kind of help them map it out.
On the other side of that, I've had people come in and say, Jerry, I just went through a divorce, and they've called into the television show, and I just met them, and I'm trying to get a grasp on everything that they have. And, sometimes it's the husband, sometimes it's the wife. It just depends. And they'll say, I never handled the finances. My husband handled the finances, or my wife handled the finances. I just, did. A lot of times we see that, right? Like, we want both parties involved, but a lot of times there's kind of one head of the household that will do that part of it. And so that other half can kind of feel lost. And I've helped them say, okay, I can help you. I'll be your sounding board. Let's figure out how to get you back on track, right? That's why I love the on-track review. And so I've walked people through that situation and take a negative and make it into a positive.
Right. I know, because you've told me before, that one of the worst phone calls you can get is that a spouse has just passed away. So you've had to help widows before, or maybe you've had somebody call in who hadn't been working with you. Where do you start there? Is it about the money? Is it about taking time? How do you walk somebody through that?
Spike, there's pros and cons of having 2 decades of experience in this business. I had clients that were in their 60s and 70s when I first started that are now in their 80s and 90s, right? I've been doing this a long time. So unfortunately, 2 to 3 times a month almost, I have a client come in and one of the spouses has passed away. But we've set things up for that. We've prepared for that. We knew that, you never emotionally are prepared for that, but we financially have them okay. So when they're reeling from the loss of a loved one, it's a great feeling for me to have them come into the office, go through the numbers, talk with them, and, put my hand on theirs and say, you're going to be okay. We're going to help you get through this. We have this written plan that we designed with you and your husband, or you and your wife. And I know you're going to lose part of your income, but remember, we did this planning over here in case this ever happened, or for when this happened, that we can trigger those benefits to replace that. You're going to be okay. And, it's tears of joy sometimes, when that happens. And when those people leave my office, it reminds me why I got into the business, why I do what I do.
Right. And then there's a lot of folks, though, who also go into retirement, and single by choice. They've been that way. And we still want to make sure that we set up a retirement plan, because there are choices like our medical care later on in life. We might become incapacitated on our own. And it's just as important to do retirement planning if you're single, because we talk about spouses all of the time. There's a lot of folks who go into retirement without a spouse. And do you help out with retirement plans there? Is it just as complicated?
No, yeah, you got to set up, who's going to be your caregiver if something does happen. If you pass away, who are you going to leave the assets to? If you don't have a spouse at home to make financial decisions for you, if you're not able to make them, who is that point person going to be? And do you have the documents in place? If you're a single person, if you're filing taxes single, you're going to be in a higher tax bracket than a couple filing jointly. So tax planning becomes even more important. You only have one Social Security and one pension if you have one. We have to look and make sure we're taking the best options. I have one client, her name is Rose, and she was a client for a long time. You know, in full disclosure, I don't always manage all of their money, right? I mean, it's just in a perfect world. Sometimes people have other relationships. I managed probably about half of her finances, and we had set up kind of that income bucket, and I had done some things for her. When you want to retire, this is where we're going to pull income from. I knew about the other assets, didn't manage them or know everything about them, but I kind of had a number of where she was at. And she came in and she said, you know, Jerry, I talked with my other advisor about retirement planning, and he kind of keeps brushing me off. She goes, but I hate my job. I want to retire. I don't want to be here anymore. And she was 67. She was full retirement age.
Yeah.
But she said, you know, I just don't know if Social Security is going to be enough. And I said, well, it probably isn't going to be enough. But let's talk about your other sources and let's take a look at it. So I knew what I had done for her. So I looked at her Social Security, turning that on. I looked at the income that we can generate from the assets that I had managed. She went ahead, brought in the other assets. We changed some things and put a plan into play. When it was all said and done, we were able to generate enough income that she was making more money than she was at the job. So not only could she retire, she was better off. And I remember that, again, the feeling, just knowing that, hey, I helped her cross that line, and I could physically see the boulder come off of her shoulders. You know? Like, wow. And I think she quit the next day. I mean, I don't even think she put in notice. I mean, she hated the job.
I'm out of here.
And that was a while ago. And I'm glad to say she's still retired. She's doing well. You know, she actually has come back to me to reinvest money again because she had more income than she needed. So her bank account built up. So she called me and says, Jerry, what should I do with this $75,000 sitting in my checking account? I'm like, oh my gosh, get in here. Let's go do something with that. Put it to work for you. So, you know, it's different types of planning for different situations, but it was great that I was able to be her sounding board and her rock to help her plan that.
So whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're a man or a woman, the On Track Review, you take a look at consistent pillars of what you do there at what retirement means to you. You look at your investments, you look at taxes, estate planning, medical choices, and income strategies, all combined together?
Correct. And I'm focused on people in that retirement red zone that are serious about retirement. You know, I'm not looking at it for the 20-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 40-year-old. I'm looking for that person that knows, hey, in the next 5-6 years, I'm going to retire. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to make sure I have all my ducks in a row and that I'm doing the right things. And I'm sure that you're out there thinking, you know, I wonder if I have all my ducks in a row. Call in, get an on-track review. There's no cost, there's no obligation. We can help you with that. But that's what we help people do. So if you would like to get that on-track review, be one of the first 10 callers, 844-878-1293, and we'll do that complimentary on-track review. We'll get you a written income plan.
Jerry, we got to take a very short break. Call the phone number that Jerry just listed out here. More what retirement means to you with Jerry Means when we get back after this. Get your own on-track review. Call 844-878-1293. We'll be right back after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to What Retirement Means to You with Jerry Means. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. On this program, we're talking about very specific financial needs and retirement planning with more of a lean on women's planning. Unfortunately, just the statistics that are out there, they tend to earn less in the workforce, spend less time in the workforce because they're taking care of both children and aging parents. And just a lot of the decisions are usually made by one side or the other. Especially in a marriage, things like taking Social Security early, it can really affect the woman more down the road because they're just actuary tables. They live a lot longer. A lot of times, somebody in the marriage will take over more of the finances than the other. Is this a good or a bad thing? Or are you trying to change that dynamic when folks come into your office?
Well, it's true. I mean, and it's not always the husband controls the finances and the wife lets him do it, or the wife, sometimes the wife controls the finances and the husband lets her take care of it. It's different all the time, but often it's one person that's really involved, and the other person's kind of like, well, if they're convinced, I'm okay with it. I had this couple that came in, and they were sitting at the conference table, and they were brand new. I hadn't met with them before. And we sit down, and I'm kind of doing my questionnaire so that I can build an on-track review, and I'm asking the base. Once I got to know them, I was asking the basic questions. And I was asking, what is your Social Security? What is her Social Security? And in this situation, the husband handled most of the finances. And his wife was there, and she was on her phone. She wasn't even looking at me or paying attention, which I was okay with that. I didn't really consider it rude. But I wanted her to be involved, right? So I kept saying, Joyce, you might want to hear this. It's important. I'd really like you to be involved. She said, he handles everything. As long as he says I'm okay, I'm okay. And I thought, okay, that's fine. So we're going through. I mean, I can't force it, right?
Right.
So I go through, and I'm getting their income, Social Security. We get to the pensions, and I say, okay, do you have a pension? And he said, yes. And it was a really nice pension. I think it was something like $6,000 a month. It was a very nice pension. And I said, okay, if something were to happen to you, does your wife get 100% spousal benefits, 50% spousal benefits, or does she get zero? And he said, I'm not sure. I'm probably going to have to call and check on that. I can't remember which election option I chose. And that's what his wife did.
I was like, whoa.
She kind of looked up from her glasses, put the Candy Crush away, and she said, Jeff, I thought you said I was going to be okay if something happened to you. And he said, well, I think so. I got to check. And she's like, well, that's something I think we ought to know.
Yeah.
Now I kind of felt bad for him, but she was right. It was something.
He may have had a rough night that night until they found out the information.
It was something that not only he should know, but she
Right.
should be know and ask as well. So they went back and they got those numbers, and it was a 50% reduction if he were to pass away. So he took a little bit bigger benefit, but left her half of that. And she said, well, what am I going to do about the other half? And I said, well, we can design a plan to fill that gap if something does happen to him before you. So we went through. Not only did I kind of save him, right, because we were able to build out a plan that solved the problem, but it got her more involved. Now, he still handles the assets, but she's involved now. She's not playing Candy Crush when she comes in for a
She's
meeting.
actively involved.
She wants to see the reports and wants to see the projections and wants to know if she's still on track. So, yeah, it does happen. It's not always that way. Just like sometimes the husband's the most aggressive investor and the wife might be conservative.
Well,
or
this
vice versa.
This is what I wanted to say to you. Statistics, study after study show women outperform men 7 out of 10 times as investors. So who would you rather have as a client?
Well, I like smart investors, right? I mean, I want them to need my help, but I want them to be smart investors. I think part of the reason, listen, we're men, right? We don't like to ask questions. We don't like to ask for directions, right? We'll drive around for an hour before we want to stop and ask directions. My wife will stop and ask someone, hey, how do we get to Wright Avenue? What street do we need to go down? Women will ask more questions than men will, that I've found in my experience.
The study
and
here,
I'm that way too, I would think.
This was done by Fidelity. It says they're more apt to ask questions, more apt to follow sound advice with education, and they are less aggressive. And guys that like to take control of it say, oh, well, I know what's going to happen in the markets, but they actually make better investors. So putting together a financial plan, wouldn't you like to have everybody involved?
Sometimes steady wins the race, right? And I think that's the case. They're willing to hit, for average, right? Hit more doubles, singles, where a lot of times I'll get the other spouse that tries to hit the home run, So Yeah, I like working with smart investors. So if you're a woman out there, I love working with women, and I love working with smart investors. The show is for men and women, but definitely give us a call if you'd like to set up that on-track review.
So the on-track review, we do talk about it a few different times during each program, but it's because we want to be clear about it. In the on-track review, it's more about having investments that you've saved for retirement, right? You can take a look at somebody's investment if they're still working, like you've said, 30s and 40s, but what's the most ideal client for you? Somebody who's close to or getting to retirement, kind of staging themselves for retirement?
Well, I'm looking for someone that's serious about serious about retirement. You've saved assets. You can see that retirement is on the horizon, or maybe you just retired or been retired a few years. You're nervous about this volatility and you want to make sure that you stay retired. That's why we call it the on-track review. Are you still on track to retire when you wanted to? And are you on track to stay retired? Those are the people that we're trying to help. And when you come in, we do that review, we're going to look at tax planning. We're going to do what I think is most important, a written income plan. And we're going to answer those questions about pensions and when is the best time to draw Social Security? What is my estate plan? Do I have the right documents in place? And healthcare. We want to make sure if longevity is in play and we need healthcare towards the end of our retirement, how are we going to address that? Those are the key areas that I help people focus on in my office. That's the focus of my practice, and that's what we do during the on-track review. So if you'd like to come in, be one of the first 10 callers, 844-878-1293.
I imagine, because she's helped you out, that you now have everything set for your wife. You have all of her planning set.
Absolutely. But again, financial planning is not an event. It's an ongoing process, so you have to stay on top of it. So yes, I do, but I'm always working to get better, and I can help people out there work to get better.
Thank you very much. And again, one of those last things on there that you do talk to people about estate planning, especially between spouse, man or woman. Woman tends to live longer. We want to make sure that we've got that estate plan set up beforehand. Everything from those Todd accounts, which we've talked about before, the transfer on death, but also making sure that our mug is filled, the mortgage, utilities, and of course, that gambling money. No.
Paychecks and play checks.
Paychecks and play checks. Thank you so much for your time today, Jerry. Great subject covered. This has been What Retirement Means to You. Please call and get your own on-track retirement review by using the phone number right here, 844-878-1293. Jerry Means will be back again with more retirement planning information once again next week.